On today's special episode of the 19.9 podcast, we're discussing the official start of the 2020-2021 season. That's right, we made it. 19.9 is about to tip off the season with 8 pairs of shorts along with Black Friday deals. We're going to break it all down. Then the Chucker sits down to do an interview with John Willkom, author of Walk On Warrior, Drive, Discipline, and the Will to Win. Let's kick the season off 19.9 style. Josh, what's going on?
What's up, sir?
Not much, man. What a strange, weird year we have, but we are finally here, the start of college basketball.
Yes, sir.
It feels like it's weird because 19.9's been around for a while, but this has been such a big year for you guys, and you missed the tournament. This almost feels like an official tip-off for you guys in a different way, like your first official season, in just a different kind of way.
Yeah, we actually are doing good.
Yeah.
You can say that,
yeah.
Meyer. This is your first college basketball season as a real company is what you wanted to say.
Well, I mean, I'll let you say it because it feels good to hear it come for you. I'm sure it feels good for you too.
So I appreciate it.
I wanted to start just talking about the season. I've got a funny lead off here. Exiting the college football season, which you're a fan of Tennessee, correct?
Yes, sir. Go Vols.
Tennessee football. How they doing this year?
It's been a brutal decade and a half, 2 decades.
So I'm going to help you pivot to college basketball. I've got a photo for you here. This is going to be your guy this year. Yeah. Tennessee, Fulkerson. Give me your reaction to Tennessee basketball. Are you going to become a Tennessee basketball fan?
I've always liked Tennessee basketball too. I'm an IU guy.
Yeah, no.
I'm one of those half fans. Football is one school and basketball is the other.
He's a guy.
And now it's reversed, right?
It is.
Now Tennessee's got this great basketball program.
Yep.
And IU has the football program.
Man,
and here I sit.
Here you are.
Fans of the opposite of that.
Hey, sometimes things go well in your life. Sometimes other things don't, right?
No. I'm excited, man. We cracked into the SEC. So
sure.
I've always kind of liked watching SEC basketball. But, we did that game, that Kentucky-Arkansas game. I'd love to get back to we need Florida to be good. We need Tennessee to be good. We need Arkansas to be good because we need people to challenge Kentucky because that's what makes the SEC great. It's awesome.
I loved that Schofield team. A couple of years ago now. Yeah. So I think that this team can have that kind of character. That guy I saw that picture and he just looks like he'd make me mad, but I'd like to watch him play.
Yeah, for sure. No, they got a good team. I love Rick Barnes. Barnes is my guy.
He is.
He's funny in that Legends book that I read because he's like an up and comer in the ACC, and he was having to go against Dean Smith and Mike Krzyzewski and Valvano and those dudes. Maybe not Valvano; they might not cross paths, but he was trying to carve his niche, and he wasn't they were saying he was wouldn't take shit off anybody and called Dean Smith out for cheating and all kinds of stuff.
Man, Rick Barnes
at Clemson.
I would not have seen that.
A new 19.9 school, by the way.
Oh, nice.
I know.
I like Clemson. Another Tiger, too. I love that.
Exactly.
Love it. All right, number 2, is Cade Cunningham 2020 penny?
Well, considering I didn't even know who Cade Cunningham was before you told me.
So you're telling me to answer this question?
Okay, so here's the deal. All right. Meyer did a lot of research for this podcast. I did zero.
Did not do any.
Per usual. And here's the deal. I tell people this all the time. I've said it on the pod. Now that we run this company, I actually watch and follow less than I have because we're so damn busy. I used to just come home from school and then not have anything to do. So I kept up on all the recruiting. I kept up on all the coaching moves and all that stuff. And now our focus is so much on the past. You know what I mean? We put so much energy into telling the story of the past.
Well, this one I thought would capture your idea because you love Penny, Memphis, 19.9 school. He does remind me of big.
So now I can't wait to watch
him. Big point guard. So if people haven't heard of him, like you, big point guard, 6'7", super athletic, can pass. Brother is the coach at the school, so he's going to get the keys to the car. They might not be in the NCAA tournament, so you might want to watch them early.
I'll watch them.
But they could be exciting.
Yeah, the biggest disappointment last year was Memphis with Wiseman.
I know.
Because we only got 3 games, and I was so hyped to watch him. So
he was fun in those first 3 games.
Yeah, no, he's
too.
awesome. He's incredible.
He's going to be big this year in Golden State now, especially with Clay down.
Yeah, with that draft. Yeah, Clay, that sucks, man.
Sucks.
So bad.
So before we get too far in, I want to talk Blue Bloods coming up next, but I want to talk about just a little bit about the releases coming out, because you got some Blue Bloods in there, or some that I consider Blue Bloods, and then just some exciting stuff coming. I specifically want to get into one of the pairs, but I'm going to let you talk about what you got, and then I'll hone in on the one that I want to talk about most.
I can do a quick rundown of what we have going.
Break it down for me.
We did Pitt and Utah and Gonzaga.
Yep.
So that was our college tip-off, with our timeline being that's when college basketball usually starts.
Yep.
Then we came back and we got hoodies earlier this week. So that was successful and fun. We got mesh shorts the Friday before that, Monday, which has been awesome. I'm wearing my Pitt shorts right now, my Pitt practice shorts that I won in the draft.
Yeah.
And you got the 99 hoodie on.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not doing this on YouTube, so we can give Bravo a little break from all the editing that he does.
Poor guy.
And then, so we were able to restock some of our shorts that people want. And we thought that it would be a good time. We know it's right before Black Friday, but we thought it'd be a good time to celebrate the season and bring them back. So then we have Black Friday through Cyber Monday, and then we have a special week of launches lined up after that. So, and with more hoodies too. So
super excited.
We got a lot of shit, man.
Hell yeah. So what I want to talk about then next is Blue Blood. So who's going to be the best Blue Blood this year? We got Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, UNC. Who you think?
Don't know.
Look at this guy. That's all right, because I got your back on this one. I think Kansas is going to be the best out of these, but I do think actually all of them are going to be good this year, which was
Carolina's interesting.
UNC was terrible last year.
They were really bad.
Really bad. So I think they're going to be better this year. Kentucky, they're not going to be. I don't think they're going to be great, but they're going to be good. Duke, I can't tell. They're ranked really high, but they don't have that like all-star like Zion guy on there, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Lost Trey Jones.
Yeah,
that's a big loss.
Do you think this is kind of probably polarizing, because Coach K is absolute legend, but I always wonder, like, where for a coach, is there a point where you start to lose? He's been 41 years, Barnett. Like, that is such a long time to do anything in life. I mean, and he's done it with excellence, so I hate to question him, but it's like the Spurs. Eventually, if you just keep saying this is the year he falls off, one of the years he will, and I don't know if this is it.
I don't know. Talent wins.
Yeah.
Jimmy and Joe's. That's it. It ain't X's and O's. I mean, a lot of it is recruiting, and then the X's and O's come out where you squeak out games and win. But it starts with talent. Anybody tells you any different is full of shit.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, everything gets started, of course, with the non-conference schedule. So do you have anything that you're excited for? Because I remember distinctly last year at this time being down here at HQ and watching Anthony Edwards, the number one pick in the draft, go bonkers in Maui.
Weren't we like cheering into the mics?
Yeah, it was crazy, because he was just draining everything from like 40 feet out.
So I always look forward to the Maui Invitational.
Now in North Carolina.
I know it's not Maui this year.
But it's got all the people, all the teams. They didn't switch up the teams for that one.
And the thing I'm most fired up for, Meyer, is this NCAA bubble that we're about to get in Indianapolis.
Don't steal my thunder. I've got that. I'm finishing with that one. We're going to talk about that.
That's all I care about right now, is let that bubble happen. Now, I want it to happen. I'll get to it, but I want it to happen with like at least 50% fans. That's got to be part of it.
You already said it. Let's do it. So
dive into
NCAA in a single geographic region, so the entire tournament is in Indianapolis. Do we close down the state for that?
Okay, but here's how they should do it, right?
Yeah.
You have different regions in different cities, right?
Yeah.
And then it culminates in Indy. So not all of it is just in. Now I know that kind of throws out the bubble, but then you make the state the bubble.
Yeah.
So we could have games at the Ford Center. You could have games up in Fort Wayne, and those could be the early round games, right? Bloomington, West Lafayette.
What about throwing in like a high school?
That's what I said.
Newcastle.
Use all these high school gyms, especially if they're not going to allow fans, or whatever, or if it's just going to be 2,000 fans. Who gives a shit if you're in a 75,000 seat arena. It doesn't matter. That's just wasted space, right? So then we could do a barnstorming tour where we just drove up and down Indiana,
man,
went to all the old high school gyms and saw the NCAA tournament. Like, it would be
you would
insane.
You'd be speechless. You'd be catatonic if that happened.
For real. I've never done drugs in my entire life. I'd be high as shit like the whole time, just off basketball.
That's why I said, I literally said Indiana would go back into lockdown for that. We're like, the virus, we've got the vaccine. We're going to need the lockdown for March Madness.
It would be bananas. But I mean, Indianapolis is a great city. If they host all of it, there's multiple gyms and stuff around there, obviously, that they can use, and they can use the greater metropolitan area too to bring in. But like, think about games at Hinkle. Now, come on.
They would have to, right?
Come on.
Yeah, it would be great.
Hinkle would be insane. I've always been a proponent of the Final Four being played at Hinkle when it's in Indy. And I'd settle on, is it Bankers Life now? They changed the damn name all the time.
Yeah.
Bankers Life?
Banker Life.
Yeah, Bankers Life is a great place to watch a game.
It's a really nice, stadium. Yep, no doubt. All right, I want to go back to the NCAA, the most surprising team of the year. Who you got?
Oh, I don't know.
Don't know? You don't have a surprising
Hoosiers.
team off the top?
National champs. I told you.
Finally, you got I'm in Hoosiers. I
don't know, man. I don't know.
I think
you should just. I should ask you.
I'm gonna
these
give you.
questions. Give me the questions.
Give me the questions. I'm gonna give you the list. We're gonna trade.
I mean, I have thoughts on all this. Once you start talking, I'm just gonna disagree.
So I'm going with Texas Tech.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think
you love beard, huh?
Yeah, I think they got the conglomeration. If it wasn't Texas Tech, I wanted to go with Texas, but Mac McClung gone to Texas Tech. I just think he's kind of a funky player.
Eligibility too, right?
Just got it. Yeah. So I think he's kind of I liked watching him at Georgetown. He was fun there.
So
more talented than people give him credit for.
I went to Texas Tech to visit Coach Knight when he lived down in Lubbock.
Did I know? Oh, and you went to Lubbock. That's right.
Yeah, we went to Lubbock.
So you went to Texas Tech.
Toured around there and got in and got our picture taken on the court. That arena is awesome.
Really?
Yes.
Surprising.
It is cool as shit. Like, the outside of it is dope. It is like, it's either on or off of Indiana Avenue, which I thought was funny with Coach Knight being down there.
Yeah, maybe why he chose it.
But no, the building itself is awesome, and then inside it's like amazing too. They have this whole shrine to their women's championship. Like, nice. I'm talking about like shrine. Hey. It's dope.
Got to celebrate those championships.
So yeah, I was a Texas Tech fan after I visited.
Like it. Texas is cool in general, especially from when you're from the Midwest. I feel like those like wide open spaces are extra impressive. That's the scenic vistas.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. All right. Do we get to move on to the next?
Yeah. Next one. You tell me, man. Okay. Now you're in charge.
Now you had IU down there.
I did. I think
that's just some home.
That's some homer. I know, right? But I do think they could be surprising because they're not getting any love. They also might be underwhelming, and we might have a new coach by this time next year.
Don't say that.
But if they've got talent, and I think that it could be some is greater than the.
We need shooters, people.
I know
we need shooters.
I'm hoping those freshmen can really shoot.
They have to.
We need it.
We're Indiana.
I know. Well, how do we not find them?
Of shooters. How the fuck do we not have a shooter? That's all I said last year.
I know.
Where are the shooters?
They're at
just
Purdue.
Walk outside and grab some little white dudes from the driveway. Let them go out there and shoot. Zone busters.
I know. We always had
infuriating.
Those guys.
It was infuriating. Yeah. We just couldn't shoot last year.
Couldn't shoot.
God damn it.
I know.
Will the Big Ten get a championship, Meyer? And if so, who's got your best? Who do you have as the best chance?
Okay, so the best chance, I think, is Illinois. It breaks my heart to say it because, again, big rival for the Hoosiers. But
new 99 school.
Oh, nice! That I love their colors. They're gonna be good this year. So they're gonna be fun to watch. They got likable players on their team. I think they're the best team in the Big Ten. I think they have the best shot. I don't think the Big Ten's going to win it this year, though. They're not. I don't even have a Big Ten team. Spoiler alert! In my Final Four.
It is crazy. It is crazy. It's been this long.
we need it. Like college basketball needs a Big Ten school to win a championship. They've been in the championship game. They just can't get over the hump.
Oh, and conference depth has been up there too. Like it has been trading off with, I'd argue the ACC and Big Ten just trade off. And maybe ACC gets the edge most years, but it's a premier conference. And
I think they're the deepest conference in the NCAA this year.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of we have a lot of depth on typical years, and so does ACC. But the ACC has like 37 schools in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Oh, I don't know.
You're gonna get one.
Throw
it out there. You could just throw it out there.
But here's the thing. I say this all the time. It's insane, and it's the dumbest thing because it's obvious. It's insanely hard to win a championship.
It is.
You have to have so much shit go right.
It's so weird, though, that it's been so East Coast dominant because there hasn't been a team west of the Mississippi to win a championship since Kansas did whenever their last championship. So that's nuts, right? Like everything's been East Coast for just forever now. So, I mean, you would think somebody's due. So I've got a few in my Final Four. I'm hoping that one of them breaks through.
So your Final Four is Texas, the Zags, Baylor, and Virginia. Explain.
I just think all those teams are good, and I'm pumped about Shaka Smart. We talk a bunch about zones and pressing, and I've always liked him. He's got his hair grown out this year.
Year 4, year 5 now?
Yeah, something like that. He's been there a while. Like he was a little bit on the hot seat, but I feel like they're back this year. They're going to be really good.
Building a new stadium.
Yeah, I just have fun watching.
Not for this year, but
fun watching him coach, watching them play. Baylor. This will be an interesting one for Baylor because this is kind of a throw out to you. Scott Drew has been there for 18 years now.
I would have never guessed that.
Can you believe that?
No, would have never guessed.
That's wild because I remember him because he started at Valparaiso.
So did he take over after Bliss and that whole scandal? Was he the coach that was hired to come in and kind of clean it up and fix it and stuff?
So he goes
it's amazing that Patrick Dotson stuff's been 18 years ago too.
18 years ago, man. It is just crazy that he's been there, but he's never won the conference, never won the conference tournament, hasn't been to the Final Four.
You can't win the conference.
I mean, not one time. I mean, he's had some good teams though.
You literally cannot win the Big 12.
Or the conference tournament.
You can't win the Big 12. Like it's illegal for another team to win the Big 12.
I know it's brutal, but this could be the year because I've got him up there. Him in Texas. I think Gonzaga. If people haven't watched the YouTube show of us drafting the shorts, those Zags practice shorts are unbelievable, and that's my pick to win it. So there is going to be a team west of Mississippi. It's going to be the Zags this year that win it.
We need Gonzaga to win. Because it's a team from like the WCC, and it's like Butler winning. Like it would have been cool as shit to see Butler win one of those national championships just to mix it up. And Gonzaga just needs it to validate like everything that they've done for the last 20 years. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
I want them to get one for them. It has nothing to do with us. 99 nothing. I just want that for them. Now their fans are crazy. Like I'm starting to see that, like crazy in a good way, like crazy loyal. Like Gonzaga has a stronghold out there on the West Coast.
Love that,
and it's funny. I mean, they've surpassed UCLA's success, and there's a lot of top tier programs that would trade the last 20, 30 years that Gonzaga's had. You know what I mean?
100%. I would trade IU's last 20 years.
That's what I'm saying.
They've been
UCLA would trade
consistent, and I think they always give you something to cheer for, even if you're not getting over the hump. I think it's coming this year. That'd
be awesome.
Virginia's really good too.
Never bet against Tony Bennett. If he gets around there. Now I know that he couldn't win the big one. He couldn't get to the Final Four. He couldn't win a national championship, but he did all that.
He did it.
And though that Virginia team,
I know
his Virginia teams. Let me rephrase that. He's
been great.
His Virginia teams are like watching Bob Knight 2.0.
I know. I don't even want to talk about it because that was who I wanted.
Oh, no doubt. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And the thing was, like, Virginia was getting a bad name because they were scoring 53 points and holding people to 48 points and shit. Indiana people would have ate that shit up.
Especially if there's a W after it.
Oh, my God. They would have loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he would have been
Who you got between Tony Bennett and Jay Wright? Who would you take?
Well,
I know it's tough, right?
Jay Wright's 1-2. So I'll give him the nod because he has to.
Okay.
But who would I want as my next coach?
Yeah. That's what I was asking. Like, you get
if you could hire anybody or whatever either of those two.
Yeah.
Bennett's a little bit younger too, right?
Yeah.
I always go youth. I do.
Ageism over here.
I do. I always go youth on that. They can stay longer, typically.
I love it.
Who would you go with?
I think Tony Bennett. Something about his demeanor, I like it a little bit more. Although the tales from the bench, hearing that guy talk about Jay Wright and what a good, high character guy he is.
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
I also think too, both those guys, a weird thing that is so much fun about college basketball and old school college basketball is they don't seem to do as well when they have like the 5-star recruits. Like they have this like mismatch of guys that fit their system and play the way they want them to, and that's their best teams. And something about that I also kind of like.
Yep. Then you would be a big fan of Nova in Virginia.
Exactly.
Yeah, they develop it and they keep it.
Yep.
But they get high profile recruits.
They do. They do. But I'm just saying, I think that their best teams have been the guys who you'd point to as their best players on those teams would be guys that they developed.
Well, that's that. I mean, you can say the same about Duke and same about Kentucky.
Fair.
To an extent. I mean, Kentucky had those two vets that stayed, Lamb and what's his name? Terrence. What was his last name?
Terrence Jones.
Yeah, Terrence Jones that stayed and kind of paved the way for Anthony Davis and Kid Gilchrist and those guys to come in. And then you had your Quinn Cooks. And
those guys are like sophomore, sophomore.
Yeah, just sophomores, but still a year in the program. Yeah. Then you had your Quinn Cooks on your Duke national championships and stuff like that. So it's always like you need that. You still need it.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard for 5 freshmen to come in and just win.
Almost impossible, I would say.
Right. Exactly.
All right. UConn is back in the Big East.
That's dope.
Is the Big East back?
The Big East never went away.
Well, that's true. Touche. I mean, like old school, like is this the start of something for the it's heading towards the old school Big East? Because the Big East, in my mind,
never
is the stuff that we've talked about, where it's like they could have been on the air every night on ESPN.
You're never gonna
unbelievable.
You're never gonna get the old Big East back. You're just not, because that had its place in time and it was just who it was. So you had your Syracuse and those were great rivalries back there, and those teams aren't coming back like UConn did.
Yeah,
for the most part.
But
here's the thing. The new Big East is badass. Like the new Big East is legit. And so the new Big East
basketball conference.
I know. And purely basketball.
I know.
So the new Big East is going to become its own like place and time where people are going to look back and be like, remember when Nova was winning national championships and Butler was good, and UConn's going to be a part of that. So they'll develop some of the new rivalries, and yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. I'm pumped that they're back.
You got any specific pairs of shorts that you want to talk about that from the restocks? I got one in mind, but I was curious.
Go ahead, throw it out there.
All right, I want to talk a little 1996 UMass. That's one of the restocks, correct?
No.
We'll edit that later then. You pick one of the restocks.
So 90. No, you don't have to edit that. 96 UMass got pushed. I'll tell you what happened.
Okay, give me the story then. What happened? See.
Well, it's coming back. It's coming back in December. So it's one of the pairs that launches in the first full week of December. So UMass fans, 96 Cambies are coming back.
Thank God.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of requests for those. So those got pushed because here's what happened. I was trying to get the 95, 96 Novas. I'm gonna screw these years up. There's all our Nova shorts bank up against each other, so it's like impossible.
Because it's that era in the Big East that we were just talking about. Like this is like glory days.
It might. Yeah, I think it's 95, 96. So I'm getting it confused. Our manufacturer also got it confused, right? So they sent the restock of the Kittles shorts when they were supposed to send the new shorts that Kittles wore his last year there at Nova, right?
Right.
Which are dope. So those are coming to Nova fans. Those will not be here until Q1. They're on a boat right now somewhere in the ocean.
Just taking a little cruise
and we had
on the ocean.
And we had the 94s Kerry Kittles, the crazy ones, the old Apex ones, show up instead. So we moved the UMass 96, since those haven't been out in a while, to December, and then these restocked today. So,
love it.
Yeah,
I mean,
we just had to pull those.
The Kerry Kittles ones are personal favorites. I wore those just on this Wednesday. Pick up hoops.
There you go.
Kerry Kittles
shirts and skins.
Yep, shirts and skins. Hey, if you're gonna wear one item of clothing to play basketball, and it might as well be those.
That's it. Yeah, man.
Any of the other ones you want to shout out? I think those are probably one of my favorite all time. But
we just got. I mean, Michigan State and Indiana State 79s are back. Those are always big and fun. And Xavier 87s. The people have been waiting on those to come back. So yeah, man.
Do you watch? Before we are out of here, do you watch the Crosstown? It used to be the Crosstown Shootout, Xavier Cincinnati. Are you going to tune into the Crosstown Classic this year? Because I think that's one of the most fun like non-conference games too.
Yeah, no, those are fun. Yeah, I want to go to one really bad.
I mean.
So soon as we get Cincinnati licensing, which should be soon,
that would be.
We'll have to go maybe next year or whatever.
So much fun because those two are such rivalries. Make basketball, and man, those two teams
don't like
each other at all.
So I went to a Xavier game and they like pulled some old dude out of the crowd and they were like, "What's your favorite? I'm here with such and such. He's had season tickets for 47 years." And he's like, "What's your favorite memory of watching Xavier basketball?" He's like, "Anytime they beat Cincinnati." Like, and they were playing Providence, the game they were playing Providence. So like, it's fun, but that's a cool rivalry, man. Like inside a big city.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like that's just cool. It would be like another decent sized school being in Indianapolis and them having a rivalry with Butler. Of course, there's going to be tension.
The animosity between the two, and the two fan bases seem to not like each other either.
Which is funny. That's fun. Which is funny. You live in Cincinnati, you identify with Cincinnati or Xavier.
Well, I think it's maybe the school, the perception of the schools, right or not. But you could find Butler in a more urban school, maybe it could have a similarity to that too. Just
exactly
how people perceive it, right or wrong.
I love both of those schools. Yeah. Cincinnati and Xavier.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Xavier. I mean, that's a good rivalry.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. You got anything else, or we're going to leave it there?
That's it. Let's leave it.
All right. Perfect, man.
Peace.
Welcome to the 19-9 podcast, where we are excited to welcome author John Willkom. I am the Chucker, 19-9's resident historian, and John's book, Walk-On Warrior, gives us a detailed look at the life of a walk-on in a big-time college basketball program. He gives us that and so much more in the book, and we're thrilled to have him here today on the 19-9 podcast. So, John, thanks for joining us here today.
Appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be on.
Awesome. Kind of an odd, I read today on ESPN.com. We're recording this on Sunday, the 15th. Coach Boeheim at Syracuse tested positive for coronavirus. We have Coach Izzo, who tested positive as well. I guess about 20 programs, or nearly 20 programs, according to the ESPN report, have shut down. So it's kind of an odd. Normally, we'd have all these teams ramping up, getting ready for the season, and it's kind of this odd time in that we don't know kind of what the 2020-21 college basketball season is going to look like, right?
For sure. Yeah, I feel bad for the coaches, the players. Obviously, as we'll talk about it, the commitment at the D1 level is year round. So to put in obviously the amount of work that they do, leading up to this point, and kind of still have a potentially a 50-50 chance to even play. I'm really hoping that they'll be able to figure something out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and so many of certainly myself and so many of our listeners as well. So, well, John, we got a lot of ground to cover here. So let's dig right in and begin with a bit of your background and how you ended up as a walk-on at Marquette to begin with.
Yeah, so it was kind of a twisted story, just in the way that I didn't go to Marquette right out of high school. I grew up in central Wisconsin in a small town called Marshfield, geographically right in the center of the state of Wisconsin. And I was a huge Marquette fan growing up. So my dad was a student there in the 70s. When we would watch games as kids, the only times we got to stay up late past our bedtime was to watch Marquette play. So I always had an affinity for the program. It was something that just meant a little bit more to me. Obviously, as I played high school basketball, and I was a good high school player. I was a 3-time all-conference player, good by central Wisconsin standards, but I wasn't a Division I player. But I did get a Division II scholarship to go play in Minnesota. I took that. I went and played my freshman year there. And I actually played quite a bit. We had a terrible team. I think we were 4-23. But it was one of those experiences where I just, by the end of the season, I kind of just reevaluated what I wanted to do, just from a college standpoint. And I kind of at that point thought maybe my basketball career is over. Maybe I'd have an opportunity to be a manager somewhere, but ultimately I just wanted to go to a bigger school. And so I kind of narrowed it down to either going back to, the University of Wisconsin or going to Marquette. And once I got into Marquette as a transfer, I thought this is a place where I really want to be. And so basketball at that point was kind of on the back burner for me. And it wasn't until I reached out to Coach Crean in like the spring of my freshman year, just saying, hey, I'm going to be transferring. I just got done, playing a season of Division II ball here in Minnesota. But I just want to stay connected to the game in some way. And I'd love to help out, whether that was in the film room or as a team manager or just something. And so he ultimately just said, hey, if you want to be a part of what we've got going on, I encourage you to come down for summer camps and just be around the program, meet the team, meet the players, meet the staff. And so that's what I did. And I basically spent, most of June and July down in Milwaukee. And I would, run camps during the day. And then at night, I scrimmaged with the guys, probably 4 or 5 nights a week, which is a lot of fun for me because obviously we had some great players and alumni would come back, and I got to play against some really good competition. And ultimately, by the end of July, one day we got done playing, and one of the assistant coaches, Brian Wardle, who's now the head coach at
Bradley, right?
Yeah. Just sat me down and said, hey, we had a spot open up. We want you to walk on. We want you to be a part of what we've got going here as a player. And you basically have another month to go home and get yourself in the best shape of your life to come back and play with us. So that's kind of the story. Ultimately, like I would come back in September and go start, going through strength and conditioning and just preseason conditioning, which is a whole nother story in itself. But that's kind of how it ultimately transpired.
Cool. So, at that point, you mentioned Marquette's a pretty good program. It's not far removed from its Final Four parents. So what year are we talking? We're talking, I think, 2004, 2005, correct? Correct.
Yeah. And we had, Dwayne Wade obviously was gone by that point, but still had Travis Diener, who was entering his senior season.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was coming off of, basically a first team all conference selection in Conference USA. And then Steve Novak was a junior, who would also go on to play in the NBA. So we had two of the best, probably pure shooters in the country. Our Achilles heel was just, we didn't have a lot of depth. We were limited inside, and teams really kind of geared up to stop those two guys.
So you mentioned you come from central Wisconsin. You go to a D2 school in Minnesota and one that struggles to win some games. And then you come to Marquette, not far removed from a Final Four appearance, pretty big time college basketball. What were some of the first impressions that you had of big time college basketball there at Marquette?
I think the number one thing that sticks out to you in terms of just the first thing that you see is just there are so many people that are involved in a program like that to make it go. In terms of coaches and trainers and strength staff and academic staff and PR people, digital marketing folks, there just always seem to be people around, which is a really cool thing. And, when you actually go to a game at that level and you see the amount of work that goes into the production of the event, it's I guess I just look at it differently now at the age of 36 of just what a production it actually is. And at the same time, you have all the resources as a player to basically get the most out of what you've got. That you're going to go through things from sun up to sundown, whether that's athletically, strength conditioning wise, film, academic sessions, study halls. So it's a wild day. It's a busy day. But ultimately, there's so many people that are around just to kind of make it go.
Absolutely, man. So let's kind of dig a little even further into that. Just how would you characterize the life of a walk-on? Because I think a lot of people, have this idea of it or kind of what it's like. And so for you, kind of what was the typical day like? What was the experience like of being this walk-on, especially on a team with, two NBA talents, and a lot of other good guys around that. Just kind of, what was that life like for you?
Yeah, one of the coolest things, I think, as I look back on it, was one of the first days when I literally got a practice jersey. Tom Crean sat me down in his office. We had a great chat just about kind of expectations and what my day to day was going to be like. And he basically just said, "I'm going to coach you like everybody else. There is, zero differentiation between, being a walk-on here or a scholarship guy or, first guy on the bench." It didn't really matter. And so from that standpoint, I think my expectations and his expectations were pretty aligned from the get-go. And I know a lot of programs, and I have had friends that have played at other schools where it's not like that. Walk-ons kind of stand on the sideline. They may run kind of half manager responsibilities, half player responsibilities. But for me, I was involved in everything. And I, practiced my butt off. I was basically in charge of guarding Travis on a day-to-day basis. And so, it was tough. But it was a lot of fun from that standpoint, just to be, looked on to provide value to the team, just as all the other 13 guys would be.
Absolutely. It seemed like you kind of really enjoyed that and kind of relished that. You weren't kind of relegated to kind of that half manager, half player duties, and that you were really put in this position like, hey, man, we're going to really come after you the same way we come after every player. It seems like you kind of a great gem of this experience for you.
Yeah. And you're forced to step up. I think one of the funny things is that, you can sit there and just say, hey, these guys can jump higher than me, or some of these guys are better shooters or what have you. But I would do shooting drills with Steve Novak, and I'll never forget this because we used to do a drill called 5-minute threes, where basically 5 minutes on the clock, partner would rebound, he would move around the 3-point line, and he'd try to make as many threes as he could in 5 minutes. I went and I think I got like 51, which for me was good. And I was proud of that. And he goes and he makes 73 threes, but he made 73 out of 75 threes. And I just stood there and I'm like, I didn't have to move, other than just stand right under the hoop. But the expertise and the efficiency from a guy like that, obviously he was a special talent shooting the ball. But it really opens your eyes up to just, one, how good he was. And two, it's like, if I don't make more than 50, this is embarrassing. Just being around that type of effort, obviously, like as my teammate. So I think having players like that around just kind of force you to get better quickly.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because you think about it's not only that Novak did that, but he did it he was what, 6'9"? I mean, he was a legit 6'9", 6'8" guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just what I sometimes don't think people get about big time college basketball. It's like, not only can they have this great skill, but then they do it in this body sometimes, that is just magnifies their skills. Not only do they have a 40-inch vertical, but they're already 6'9" with, a 7'2" wingspan, so it's just like, that's really sometimes the difference. And I would imagine that was a huge difference as you went from D2 to D3, because you saw good players at D2, but they weren't 6'9",
For sure. The freakish athleticism, obviously in Division I is that's a crazy difference. That's probably the biggest difference. To your point, there are some very, very good players at Division II level. But most of like the true fives were probably 6'8". You have a lot of guys that would play on the wing as like small forwards that were 6'4", 6'5". Good shooters, take care of the ball, very skilled. But there were no guys that were going to like dunk on you from the wing. And so there were moments like that. And we had a two guard named Damian Mason, who eventually left Marquette and transferred to LSU. But just a tremendous athlete. And there would be moments in practice sometimes where, he'd take a dribble to the baseline and just take off and pull it back and just dunk hard on guys. And, those were the moments as a as a person kind of new to Division I basketball that it's like I didn't grow up seeing that every day.
Yeah. So beyond the athleticism, I know you talk in the book about how this experience really changed how you live your life. And so let's dive into that a little bit. And so what were some of the particularly valuable experiences you had? What did you see, learn, and take away from your time as a walk-on at Marquette?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first things is just like the consistency that goes into every day. People used to joke with me like, I could practice, for a week with the team and do just fine, and I could make it through some of these conditioning sessions. And I don't disagree with them, but it's like, try doing that for 8 straight months. Mm-hmm. Try going through strength and conditioning sessions at 5:30 in the morning for, the next 180 days. There's a mentality change that takes place. And the funny part about it, and we joke about this now, but you're also like 18, 19, 20 years old. And so mentally, you're still trying to kind of just figure life out to begin with. And so I think that it's an interesting intersection between just like the maturity of some of these guys are kind of just kids. We're kids. We're trying to figure it out. So I think that's a big part of it. The other thing, and one thing that I'll never forget is because I transferred from a Division II school to a D1 school, even though I wasn't on scholarship at Marquette, I was forced by NCAA rules to not be able to suit up for the games. So in one standpoint, it's like, I obviously know I'm a valued member of the team. I'm there every day doing everything that everyone else is doing. But, it is it was disheartening at the beginning of the season to be able to not, suit up and actually like go through the warm-ups for the games. And basically I'm sitting on the bench in a collared shirt and pants, but we were maybe 5 games in, and it's halftime of a game that we're losing, and everybody's upset, and we're just kind of talking. And the coaching staff would always go into a different room first, and then they would come in and like address the team. Mm-hmm. So they go do their thing. A couple minutes later, Crean comes storming in the locker room, and he's like, "John Willkom, stand up." And it's like, me? Why? And so I stand up. I basically stand right in the middle of the room, and he just like berates me for a good probably 60 seconds about how I was just screwing around in practice all week, and the fact that it was my fault that I didn't prepare these guys for certain looks, and just blah, blah, blah. And then he just is like, "Sit down." And he storms back out of the room. And that was the halftime speech. And I thought to myself, like, what? And, finally Travis looks at me and just starts laughing, and it's like, man, if we get down anymore, like, this is great, because you'll just take all the blame.
I have to think you're 19, 20 years old at that point. I have to think at that point, you think Crean is the biggest ass in the world.
Exactly. So I'm like, I thought I had a good week of practice, whatever. But the interesting part is that as I kind of just reflected on that, even the next few days, I thought, it's a pretty cool thing that a guy that's not even playing in the game matters enough, and like my contributions matter enough that he would even say that. And I think that goes back to just the very beginning of the season, which was just like, we all have a role. We're all accountable in some way. And he was going to hold me accountable, whether I was playing in the games or not.
Yeah. Let's kind of then, stick on this idea of, big time college basketball. And we talked a little bit about maybe just something that, the amount of people around, that was like, people just don't get that. What are maybe just some of the other things that you think people misunderstand or maybe don't see when they think of big time college basketball? We see the game on Saturday, right? Or the big game on Big Monday. But what is it that you think just the average fan maybe doesn't fully take into account sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to answer this, but just, I'll start with one thing, and I alluded to this earlier, but the amount of hours that you actually put in is crazy. And even now, as a working professional, it'll never come close to like what I was actually doing when I was playing. To give an example of this, like, we would start and do conditioning at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, even during the season. I go to class from 8 to noon, grab a quick lunch. I practice from probably 1 to 4, 4:30. we would get done. We would grab dinner quick. We'd usually come back and watch some film. We'd have study hall from 6 to 8 o'clock. And then we actually had a thing at Marquette called Maximize the Day, which I actually really liked this concept. But at the time, we all just kind of laughed because it was like, who's going to want to do all this extra stuff at 8 at night after, 16 hours of work. Yeah. But we had a chart in our locker room that was just like, anything that you did to maximize your day basketball wise above and beyond kind of the normal repertoire. So, maybe it was getting up 100 extra threes or going through his ball handling workout or what have you. So, bottom line is that if I chose to do that, I'd get home at 9 or 9:30 and still a college kid that had homework and papers to write and,
chasing a girl or two.
Yeah, it was tough. I think that's part of it is you put in so much and you're trying to just, like I said, figure your life out a little bit and, make some times for, with friends or, go hang out with, buddies in another dorm. So I think part of what people don't understand is just the mentality as an 18 or 19-year-old isn't obviously the same as a 35-year-old fan watching the game on TV.
And so you're a walk-on for just the one season, just the 2004-2005 season, correct?
Correct.
So what was your calculus about maybe not trying to go beyond that?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot and even like leading up to that. So I was planning to play the next year. I went through this, spring workouts, and really had improved a lot. I mean, when I showed up on campus, I was probably 158 pounds. By the end of the season, I was up to like 178. I mean, I gained just like 20 pounds of muscle. I was in phenomenal shape. So I liked where I was at, like athletically. One thing that really changed kind of my mentality is, I took a foreign exchange trip to Europe as part of this like business program for 3 weeks. And, Crean had okayed it and just, it was basically from late May to like the middle of June where I would go over there, earn a few credits, take a course, come home. And when I got back from that, there was just a ton of pressure on me to get back into basketball shape like immediately, which was hard because I kind of felt, and we were on the same page in terms of doing things to kind of broaden your life, having a college experience that was memorable. And so that certainly wasn't the only reason, but I think it just kind of changed my perspective a bit on, everything that I do around the clock has revolved around basketball, really up to that point, my entire life. And what more was I going to get out of it? Was I realistically going to have a shot to play that next season? Maybe. But we had a great recruiting class coming in with Dominique James, Drell McNeil, Wes Matthews. So I just got to a point where I just didn't think I could continue to put in the time at the level that was required. And I didn't think that was fair to the team. And so, I actually went right from not playing to then coaching at a local high school. And I coached, I was an assistant varsity basketball coach for my junior and senior years of college, which was an awesome experience for me as well. And, I think me staying connected to the game in some way was something that was always going to happen. I just didn't know exactly kind of how that stuff would play out. But I was really grateful to kind of just say, I'm done. I just don't feel like I can contribute anymore. And then, making a pretty quick transition to go and coaching down the street at the high school.
And so you mentioned how you kind of then get into coaching. Was the hope, or at least your plans at that point, you're 20 years old or so, was the hope is that you could maybe make a career in basketball somehow? I mean, was that kind of the plan or the hope?
Yeah, I had always wanted to be a college basketball coach. I think that was just like in my blood. Even people today are like, man, you love basketball. And I would never deny that. But I think the other thing that I saw at Marquette, and just being around the program was just the crazy, crazy commitment, especially on the assistant coach side, at that level. There'd be so many days when I would come in, to get ready to go lift at probably 5:15 in the morning, and I would see half of our staff like laying in the players' lounge on the couches. it occurred to me at that point, like, I just don't know if that's the life that I want for myself, for my family, if I have one. How sustainable is that for me? And so, and in some ways, the Marquette experience, I wouldn't say like, completely kind of crushed that dream, but it definitely like made me think about just the realities of potentially doing that and kind of what role would basketball play in my life. Maybe it didn't need to necessarily be a job, but it'd be something that I could continue to follow passionately, just maybe in a different way.
It's interesting because then, you do some basketball camps and get involved with an AAU program too. So talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah. The crazy part about the AAU stuff is that I started a basketball camp in my hometown when I was a senior in high school. And I started it with a buddy, and I thought, I've gone to all these great camps. I've been around all these great players up to that point. Why don't I bring something like that just to the kids locally? So we had this camp, a bunch of kids showed up. It was fun. Second year, so my freshman year, I guess after my freshman year of college, had, camp again, but we ended up having 3 camps, and we had probably like 300 kids come. And by the third year, we had so many kids just showing interest in these camps, that we actually had like a summer camp circuit around the Midwest. And so that played a bit of a role as well. I was still playing basketball. I was doing my own camps. I was thinking about whether I wanted to continue playing. So the camps kind of led into the AAU program, which is called Wisconsin Playmakers, and it's still running today. They've got programs for kids, 3rd through 12th grade. And we actually, one of our alums is Matt Thomas, who's a shooting guard for the Raptors. Mm-hmm. But that whole experience was amazing to me, just because, again, it allowed me to stay connected to the game. It allowed me to kind of build something, with people that were friends of mine, and just kind of create something awesome for kids that maybe didn't have as many opportunities as some of the kids that reside in bigger cities.
Awesome, man. So we're going to dig into the book in just a moment, but we're talking about kind of your connections to the game. And 1909 recently released Utah Utes Gear, and the late great coach Rick Majerus is certainly a prominent figure in that program's history. Now, Rick Majerus is a figure in your life too. So tell us about Rick Majerus, how you came to interact with him, and how you would describe the coach, and maybe a good story or two of that pretty eccentric character.
I love Rick Majerus. God bless him. I was doing an internship with a sports agent in Milwaukee, and this was quite a summer because I got to meet a lot of prominent figures. I worked Donald Driver, the former Green Bay Packer receiver's football camp, and he was one of our bigger clients, so I got to hang with him a bunch, which was fun. But Rick Majerus was one of our clients, and he had just moved back to Milwaukee. He was taking care of his sick mom at the time, and he needed an assistant. And naturally, he wanted like an actual like admin assistant. And the guy that ran the sports agency is like, you should have John do it. He can do it. He loves basketball. He's a fan of yours. Like, you're going to love this kid. And Rick's like, no. And so a couple weeks go by, weren't able to find anybody. And the head of this agency comes back and he's like, you still want to work with Majerus? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to work with him. So Rick finally kind of caved and said, all right, so
send me the kid.
Yeah, send me the kid. So here's the crazy part. Rick was living in a hotel in downtown Milwaukee, and he had lived in a hotel at several of his other stops, including in Salt Lake City. But he finally was like, I want to move out of this hotel. I bought this condo. Can you help me move? And it's like, yeah, I guess I can do whatever you want me to do. So we spent a lot of time packing things up. But one of the funniest things is the first day I go to meet him, I'm knocking on his hotel room door, and nobody answers. And I'm like, this is great. And then maybe 30 seconds later, I see this man walking down the lot, like through the hallway of the hotel, and he's wearing a Speedo. He's soaking wet, and he's got goggles on. And it's like, is that him?
And not a small man.
He's a large man, a very large man. So no towel, just soaking wet. And it's like, he's like, sorry, I was just getting some laps in the pool. And it's like, okay. So that's why I met Rick Majerus. We proceeded to obviously pack all these boxes, and he was so good to me in so many ways. I'd be cleaning out, crates of stuff, and I'd find signed Jordan sneakers. And I'm like, what do you want me to do with these? And he's like, well, you can't have those, but maybe you can have these other ones, and we just had a great time. I mean, at one point we moved into the condo unit. He had a patch of grass outside that was probably about 6 by 6 feet. I mean, the whole thing was covered under an HOA anyway, but he's like, can you go to a hardware store and buy a garden hose? You need to water that lawn. And it's like, you sure? So anyway, I did that. And then the last story that I'll tell is, we spent about 3 months talking about his health and just, I need to eat healthier. I need to watch what I'm drinking, all stuff. So he was actually doing better. I obviously even grocery shop for him and, fill his refrigerator and stuff. So I had a pretty good idea of what he was eating. At least I thought I did. But towards the end of the summer, he sends me this message and basically says, you need to go to this sausage factory in downtown Milwaukee to pick up an order for me. And I'm like, okay. So I go to this place and they say, hey, we've got 89 pounds worth of bratwurst for Mr. Majerus. And I just shook my head and I'm like, this is so stereotypical. This can't be right. I can't even fit all this stuff in my car. And so I call him and I'm like, why do you want all this? And he's like, oh, I'm having an event. I'm having this party. I'm like, no, you're not. He's like, just pick up the bratwurst. So I basically brought the stuff, filled his garage freezer with all this bratwurst. And, I never knew what actually happened to that, but I have a strong suspicion that there was never a party.
It just trickles down 2 or 3 at a time, huh? Awesome, man. So let's kind of dig into the book a little bit. Great read. It's called Walk On Warrior: Drive, Discipline, and the Will to Win. That dropped in 2018. So let's first talk about what spurred you to tackle a project like this and what kind of ignited you to put pen to the page, so to speak.
So I started writing this book, or at least writing stories down, back in 2003. So during my freshman year in Minnesota. And when I got to Marquette, I started actually writing a bit more just because there were so many unique things that were happening to me. Whether it was my first strength session, and how brutal that was, or different people would come to practice and watch. We had coaches from the NBA and different GMs and, people from Nike bringing us different gear. And, it was really it was stuff that I just wanted to remember. And honestly, I thought, I'm just going to jot some of this stuff down. If anything, maybe I'll just show this to my kids someday. And that was kind of that. And to be honest, I didn't touch it after I graduated college in 2007. So I had all these Microsoft Word docs kind of scattered around. And it wasn't until, so my wife is a doctor, and we were basically shipped out to Portland, Oregon for a residency several years ago. And at that point, anyone that's kind of in the medical field knows this, but residency is brutal, and these doctors
all consuming. Yeah.
90, 100-hour weeks. So the first year I was just, I was watching all these games and taking jogs all over the city. And I kind of just thought, I gotta find something to kind of do here, besides just go to work every day. And so I just kind of dug back into the book, and the more that I did it, the more I just thought, I just want to turn this into something that's complete still, so I can give it to my kids. And it wasn't until maybe the last 6 months where I was just reading through parts of it, and I said, why don't I actually work on this and try to make it, more succinct and make it into a real book? And I think, anytime you share something that's super personal to you, there's kind of just those questions of do I really want to share this with the public? But I think I got to a point where I just thought about my own upbringing, my own childhood. and just thought, I would have loved to have read a book like this when I was in high school. I would have loved just a no holds bar kind of raw look into like what actually goes down in a Division I practice, or like what a season looks like. And there's nothing in the book that crosses that line of respect in terms of what happens in that locker room. But I did want to write something that was just authentic. And I think, being a sports book fan, I've read so many books over the years that they're so generic. There's a bunch of stats and scores, but there's just no emotion behind like what's being told. And so I think that my goal for the book was I just wanted to tell it to people straight. And I think a lot of people have appreciated that. And it's been fun for me just getting feedback because I just try to tell it kind of like how I saw it.
It's interesting. I mean, you start with these notes, from your 20-year-old self, right? And then you're revisiting these a decade later and starting to kind of put it all together into, a coherent narrative. And so did that, as you especially were looking on this with the benefit of 10 years of time and added maturity and life experiences, did that, you mentioned that story earlier about Crean just berating you at halftime while you're wearing khakis and a polo, not even playing, right? Yeah. And thinking, God, this guy's such a jerk, which is how the vast majority of 20-year-olds respond. Like, why are you yelling at me? I didn't, miss an assignment. But I mean, with the benefit of that 10 years, did it kind of force you or compel you to look upon that experience at Marquette very differently? And how so?
Yeah, I think one of the beautiful things about just the book itself is that people will recognize some of the sections that were written when I was 20 versus some that were written when I was probably 35, 34. And it does. It changes things. And at the same time, I kept some of those kind of early writings the way that they were, because I didn't want to change the way that I viewed it when I was 20. And I think that that's kind of the fun part of the book sometimes, even for me. It's like, man, I can't believe this guy said this. But it's like, I wrote some of that stuff down right after practices. And so, yeah, I think I definitely, you definitely think about things different. You view things probably with more maturity now. But it's crazy to me how the other thing that happens when you're actually in it, your mental state just becomes, you become so much tougher mentally. And that was one section, even in the book. Todd Townsend was a senior when I was playing. Great guy. Has done a lot of coaching at the college level.
For those that don't know about Todd too, a really interesting backstory, from a Southside Chicago home, was adopted later on in his life by a teammate, Matt Loddick, who's now the head coach at Valparaiso University. His grandma adopted Todd. It's a really fascinating story about Todd's kind of late teen years. Real rich character. Yeah. Yeah.
And Todd was the one that kind of came up to me one day and was just like, after you've gone through a lot of this stuff for long enough, you don't think so much about like, how am I going to make it to the next drill? You kind of just, you don't have like a finality in your mind. And that, I think that's a huge thing, for just how people navigate through a college season, especially with some of the conditioning and such. We didn't have a clock in our gym. You never knew when like things were going to be over. But his point was just like, you just do things one at a time, and when it's over, it's over. And there was definitely a maturity there for someone who had kind of been through this, where, if we're going to practice for 2 hours or 6 hours, it didn't really matter to him because he was just locked into one thing at a time. And I think that was just a very mature thing for him to say to me, and something that definitely like changed my mindset, after a few months in the program moving forward.
And so, when you reflect on this book again, about 2 years old, what was kind of the overriding message that you wanted to share with readers as they kind of dig into Walk On Warrior? They read about these experiences. What did you kind of hope they took away, and what was the overriding message you wanted to share?
I think the biggest thing is I didn't take the time to like summarize, thoughts at the end of each chapter. I didn't necessarily want to tell people like what they should take. But I wanted it just to be as authentic as possible. My hope for the book was just that kids, parents, coaches could relate to it in some way. If there was a kid that was a 9th, 10th, 11th grader that was thinking, God, is it really worth all this work to get to this point? Do I really have a shot? What's a day in the life there versus what I'm doing here? I think it just puts a different perspective on kind of like what hard work actually is, the expectations at that level. And I think it also gives a lot of kids, hopefully, in a similar situation where, 90% of America probably isn't coming from a blue chip high school program where they're just, groomed to a place where they've got 15 plus D1 offers. And so hopefully it gives kids, some hope and just that you can come from anywhere, you can get to where you want to be. And at the end of the day, I just wanted to maximize my talent. And I think, there's a good part of the book that's just kind of about what happened after, and the things that I was able to take from my experience to kind of help leverage into the rest of my life.
So let's talk about that then too. I mean, how did this talk about how it kind of propelled you throughout the rest of your life, this 1 year, and how influential that was and kind of pushed you and catapulted you to kind of what you're doing today?
Yeah. I mean, I think I took a lot of those, same habits, just into business. And I kind of worked my way up. I'm the vice president of e-commerce at an agency here in Minneapolis. But I've always kind of looked at life as you have to be able to win, against other people, and you have to find creative ways to do that. And, I've really tried to kind of implement that in my business career. And at the same time, I learned a lot about relationships. I learned a lot about discipline. And as I mentioned earlier, just doing things consistently, like day after day after day. And just having that mindset that it's not so much about the results as it is about, what I'm doing and being fulfilled with what I'm doing, and the results will come after that.
Awesome. So John, we're going to kind of wrap it up here and let you get on with your life. But before we do that, let's kind of reflect on a little bit of that year there at Marquette and kind of do some rapid fire. So what was the favorite gym? You were on the bench for these games. What was the favorite gym you went to? Favorite gym you played in?
Yeah, I love playing at the Paul, just because the fans were absolutely nuts, and they were so close to the court. So I'll say that. And then the other one I want to mention is I played in the state championship as a freshman in high school, and that was at Milwaukee's Mecca, which is where the Bucks play. And just that logo. I think you guys actually have a logo on your website for a T-shirt. 19-9
is thrilled to be repping the Mecca. You bet.
Absolutely. So being on that Mecca floor was special for me, and we won that state title, and I'll never forget that.
It's awesome. Cool. Best player you saw live during your year at Marquette?
It's probably Salim Stoudemire. And actually, I got to talk to Lute Olson before that as well. Just an awesome guy. There's a funny story about him in the book. But Salim Stoudemire was a guy with no conscience, shoot it from anywhere. And that was a hell of a matchup when he was matched up against Travis Diener.
Awesome. Cool. You mentioned you're a reader of sports books. So tell me, what's your favorite sports book?
Probably Open by Andre Agassi. I don't even like tennis that much, but it was actually one of the inspirations for my own book, which was just the way it was written, was so unbelievably just raw. I was shocked at some of the things he said, but it was kind of just like spilling out of his brain, as he was telling me stories. If you haven't read it, I would definitely check it out.
Awesome. You mentioned earlier Steve Novak hitting all those threes during the 5-minute drill. Travis Diener wasn't too bad too. Who's winning in a 3-point shootout between those two?
I had to think long and hard about answering this, and my answer is probably nobody, because they both refused to leave the gym. And it would be double or triple and quadruple or nothing. So I would say it would probably be whoever leaves the gym first.
Maybe neither of them. So, and then finally, as a college kid, what was the best thing about being a walk-on at Marquette? I mean, free gear, that's nice when you're 20 years old. So just for you, though, what was the best thing about being a walk-on at Marquette?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the free Gatorade machine in our locker room. It got to the point where Crean or somebody put a limit on the number of Gatorades you could take out of there at one time. Because, guys would walk out of the locker room with like a 12-pack of Gatorade in the duffel bag, which is pretty funny.
Gotcha. Well, John, let's end it there. And as I said, let you get on with your life. The book is Walk On Warrior, Drive, Discipline, and the Will to Win.
Thank you for listening to the 19.9 podcast. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do. And while you're there, leave us a rating or review. We have links to all of 19.9's social media so you never miss a release. Until next time.